Welcome back, y'all, to Confluence World Podcast, where I'm so excited. We have a show today that we have been kind of strategically planning, and I think what's been really cool is that I feel like in a lot of ways, the Lord has worked throughout this whole show as being a provider and being able to place people and place location and place technology in the right places at right times to make this show work. And so with that being said, we were able to, I know, Sydney, you and I talked a month ago maybe, and that was just about what was happening during your season and kind of how things were looking as you were coming to the end of the season. But now the season's over. And so I'm super thankful to both of you all. We have, folks, two representatives from Michigan State Gymnastics here today, and quite a bit of questions and content that we get to break down with them. But once again, super excited. Thank you, Sydney, for making this happen. Sage, thank you for being here as well. And with that being said, I'm kind of curious to know, because you both finished at the Gainesville Regional Final, and that was one I was watching from home, seeing that it was a tough competition with the likes of Utah in there and Florida. So I was curious, Sydney, I'll start with you, I know you're a senior. I know that this kind of run was the last campaign that you have competing. How did you feel about how things finished up? I know that you guys ended in the regional final for back-to-back years. So I was just wondering, what were your immediate takeaways? And now that we're something like a week and a half away from the season, how are you feeling?
I would say it's definitely sad for sure. I think immediately after, we were sad that we didn't make it, but we were mostly just sad because it was like, wow, that was the last time competing with everybody. That was our last time out there, representing the green and white. Kind of just it all hit us at once, just taking it in. That was kind of our initial reaction at the end of that.
For sure. For sure. And I know something that's been super cool for me to see as being kind of an outsider, but understanding what's happening within the program is that there's been a lot of development and change and a lot of really high scores that have come the last couple of years. And I was curious, the question in that is, from your perspective, from somebody who's been there and done that over the time of being a collegiate athlete, is that a culture thing that's changed? What goes into creating the environment that you guys have as a team and have seen the last couple of years?
I think for sure coming in, it was really hard because of COVID. That always comes back up, right? It's oh, it was COVID. And I feel like that just made it hard for us to really focus on us. And that was kind of the change that we saw on the team, throughout these past 4 years. It was kind of a transition from doing it for yourself to doing it for the team, doing it for something greater than the team, just seeing the shift in your focus, making it more team oriented, focusing on getting to know each other, spending time outside of practice. That was something that definitely contributed to our team being so successful these past few years.
Absolutely. And then Sage, I want to bring you into our conversation here, because you as a sophomore had just a tremendous campaign, I would say. For anyone out there looking nationally, is wow, you were kind of one of the queens of the vault that a lot of people had said or applied that title to you. And so I was wondering, being that you saw the type of success that you did both last year, but then even adding on to it this year, what were some of the changes that were made from your freshman year to sophomore year? And overall, how are you feeling after completing year two?
I think definitely a huge change was my confidence. Coming as a freshman, I didn't really believe in myself, and I think that this year I came in and I kind of knew what to expect, and I knew that when you come to college, it's a lot more of self-driven, because a lot of the time the coaches can't really tell you what to do. There's only a short period of time where you have practice hours. So I think that I knew what to expect, and I could push more to get there.
That makes sense. And I think too is one of the things that I was thinking about, especially, was it just today that you guys are sending two members to Fort Worth for national championships? Is like, what was it like to, or what is it like to be in an environment where that's beginning to happen? Like that's the expectation, to send people to national championship, to be on that level, and to be working, competing with them and against them in those limited hours that you have.
I think it's so exciting, and just like seeing the whole team grow together is just like so amazing to see, and everyone on the outside too is just like everyone is coming to know Michigan State Gymnastics, and it's just something so cool to see.
And Sydney, thank you first off for answering that, because that ties in very well to where I wanted to go. Is what I've been blown away by is seeing how you guys have conducted even Bible studies. And like when you are going on the road and in different environments, one way that you all stay connected, it looks like, is through the Word. So I was wondering if you could take me inside, like where that originated. Was that always true since you've been a part of Michigan State, or where does that kind of come from that you're now celebrating your faith and practicing outwardly on top of maintaining this stature as athletes?
Yeah, so it was definitely not a thing before. I think my freshman year we had about 3 people who would regularly attend like events through AIA, so like through the campus ministry, for athletics, and not very many people were very open about their faith, and that was something for me. Coming into college, I was not a believer. I didn't know much about the Lord, any of it, and it was something that was kind of scary. And I knew that I wanted to pursue a relationship with God, but I didn't really know how to do that because there weren't a lot of people on my team that were believers and were open about it. One of the seniors, though, she was one who kind of like brought me in and got me involved. And I still was a little hesitant at first, for sure, but it was really cool seeing the class below me come in and a lot of them being believers and being very open about it. And that kind of opened up the gates for the rest of our team. And everybody was kind of like, oh, like you see, like there's 5 people going to this event. And they're like, oh, you're going to go again this week. Like, can I come? So it's kind of cool to see that develop. And at some point we had almost our whole roster attending AIA every Tuesday night, which was pretty cool to see. We still have quite a big turnout, not as much as before, but like you were saying, we now have Bible studies that I took over leading this year, my senior year. We started off with rowing. So it was gymnastics and rowing, and we would meet, I don't know, what days did we meet? We met, Fridays. And then this past semester, since we've been traveling, we went back to doing individual sports. So started off with just Sage and I meeting up one Friday, and we were like, hey, like let's just do Bible study. And every week we just text. We have a couple of us in the group chat, and we're like, anyone who can come or wants to come, like we're gonna meet. We're just gonna have a Bible study Friday mornings. And I think it was actually Sage who suggested we do it while we're traveling. She was like, well, why not? We're all in the hotel, so let's just get up early before breakfast and just spend a little time in the Word and then go about our day. And so that was kind of how like we started doing that. And we started doing it more and more because we would be, for regionals, we were gone for 4 or 5 days. And so every morning we were like, why not? Because we're all in the hotel together, and we were like, it's perfect. We don't have to go anywhere. Just get up and come down and read a little bit before we get our day started.
Certainly. I love that. I love hearing how, and that's kind of funny enough, a similar change that I've been hearing about within different sports. And so I love that it's all kind of happening right now. And like, I'm not sure why. I'm not sure. I think maybe is thinking about it, what you were saying about COVID and how that's when things started to shift a little bit. But Sage, I was wondering, like, being that you were one of the forces for introducing that on the road, like, how do you think that went And like, what did doing that and being able to refocus as a team around the word, like, how did that help you out this year?
I think definitely something new this year is like getting in the word the first start of the day, like opposed to at night or something. I think that it automatically starts us off on the right foot. And then when you have like your sisters in Christ around you that you can bounce ideas off of and they can pull different things from the word too, I think it's just very beneficial.
For sure. And I know I appreciate you guys for bringing the word as well over to 667 Spartan Avenue, where we're at our studio. But that's important, though, the fact that we have this before us, because one of the things that I wanted to kind of change and grow in is how deeply rooted our conversations are. So I was wondering if you wanted to take the lead off on maybe a verse or kind of something that's been important to you as of late.
So lately I came across this verse that I've kind of been going by this whole season. And it's Psalm 34. And it says, "From his throne he observes all who live on earth. He made their hearts so he understands everything they do." And the part that I want to kind of touch on is he made their hearts. And I think it's super important to understand just how God like creates us and like how we need to humble ourselves before him and just kind of understand that whatever we go through is his will. And I think something lately that I've been focusing on is like at the end of each prayer, God's will be done. Just because like no matter what, like in anything, like in your life, in sports, obviously nothing always turns out how you want it to. And so just being humble enough to understand that that's for the purpose of you because of your creator.
Wow, that's good. Thank you. Yeah, of course. Thank you for bringing that. That's awesome. And I think, too, like, one of the things that I wanted to touch on with you specifically is the concept of, being handed a 10 during a competition. And I was reflecting on a couple of the videos that came out, just whether it be from Big Ten Gym or whoever it was, but videos of you scoring a 10. And so, because it happened twice this year, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So in that is like when you are competing and aiming at that max score, I was wondering if you have thought about or like how that compares to your walk with Christ.
Okay.
And so in that, and sorry, I kind of broke off there just
good.
as a question, but the comparison being like looking at what judges are saying and how they're assessing your performance compared to the way that you want to be more Christ-like and how that's all developing. Do you see a comparison there? Like how does that work for you?
Yeah, so the first meet of the season, actually, I got a 10. So that was it was nice, but like going into the other meets, like obviously you want to get a 10 every time because you know you can do it. And so that's when I really started thinking about like God's will, because you're not always going to be perfect. Nobody's perfect. And so just like understanding that you try your best and the outcome is what it's supposed to be because of it's God's will. And I think you would never learn anything if you were perfect every time. So that's just something that I would focus on. Like no matter how good I did or how bad I did, either way, like there's so many more things to be thankful for and to be happy for. Like I'm sure there was something great about the entire meet or someone else who did super good that you can celebrate them.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I think like that's a really interesting question because when, as you said, you came out in the first meet and were able to do that, did you find that applied more pressure to you the rest of the way? Or what would you say your relationship with that pressure and expectation is today after the year's over?
So definitely after the first meet, I struggled going into the next meet because obviously I knew like the 10's on the table, take it or leave it kind of thing. But later on, Gabby, actually one of our teammates, had came up to me and she was like, stop comparing. And I think that's so important just because like going back to humbling yourself, like you can't be perfect. So I think, yeah, just it did apply a lot more pressure on the season, but after the next couple of meets, I kind of snapped out of it and then just tried my best, and I ended up getting another one and then ended the season out good. So
Absolutely. And thank you so much for sharing and for bringing a piece of scripture. I love that. And I think like that draws, from where I sit, a really direct comparison between your walk and between how the performance was. So, Sydney, I want to shift over to you. Is there anything that you have been thinking about relating to your walk and comparing it with how the season went, or even not, just as you, I know, are uniquely between both of you moving on to postgraduate at this point. So I was wondering, like, being that the year's over and that you're looking forward, what are you kind of thinking about in terms of your walk and anything that you may have read recently?
Yeah, I have, there's a verse in Isaiah. It is Isaiah 41, the end of verse 9. I have chosen you and have not rejected you, so do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. And specifically the first part, I have chosen you and I have not rejected you. That is one that I went back to a lot this past season. There were a lot of things that it was like, it's a whole season of lasts, right? And so it was kind of like everything I did, it was very much like on display. And I was like, oh, that was the last time I'm going to do this. And this is the last time I'm going to do that. And so I think I was thinking a lot about it beforehand. And then I would think a lot about it after too. And sometimes it went the way I wanted it to, sometimes it didn't, right? And just remembering that it doesn't really matter how it went, because going back to this verse, Lord saying like, I have chosen you and I haven't rejected you. So it doesn't really matter what I did or what happened. And that's something that not only did the word remind me of it, but my teammates reminded me of it as well. Sage specifically, there were a couple times where she would be like, it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. Like, it's what the Lord thinks. And that was like definitely something that I held on to this past season.
Absolutely. And thank you for sharing and for being vulnerable. I have really appreciated hearing both of your perspectives and kind of what's been going on. But I wanted to kind of get deeper into what you were saying, Sydney. And in that, I would love to know, if you wouldn't mind sharing, were there any moments or like reflecting over your career with Michigan State Gym that you can identify of like, this was a turning point for me with my faith, or like this was a time where I felt, rejected and outcast from what you've been doing over the course of time? And if there is an example of that, how did you refocus and kind of shift that perspective?
Yeah, for sure. I would say, so after my freshman year, end of my freshman year, well, I guess we didn't really have much of a season, but we started off, and then I ended up getting hurt. So after the first meet, I was in a boot, not competing. Went through my sophomore year, competing or not competing, practicing through an injury, which essentially just left me out of competition because couldn't do as much as I needed to in the gym because I was hurting. I got surgery after my sophomore year. So junior year, I was on the mend. But again, going into season, didn't have the reps that everybody else had. So I just wasn't as consistent. I wasn't performing at my best. And it was definitely hard. It was a struggle, like both mentally and physically, like just trying to push myself constantly. And I think it was after my junior year, I was like, okay, I have one more year. Like, we need to make the best of it, right? And I think that was really like, that was my turning point. And I was like, I need to stop doing this for myself because that's not working. These past like 3 years, I was doing it for myself and I was just kind of upset all the time. Like, things didn't go my way and it was like, oh, I had a bad practice, that was a terrible day. And like that is not a fun way to go about life. And so it was like going into my senior year, I was like, I need to fix this. And that's when I decided like I was doing it like I need to do it for the Lord. And so that was something that helped me a lot this past year. Like remembering that it's okay. It's not all about my sport. And that's something that we talk about all the time. But like until you actually like fully commit to that, it's like it's hard to believe. And so after I decided that I was like fully gonna commit to that, it was instant seeing the change in like my heart and how I approached life. And it was really cool to see that.
Mm. Wow, there are quite a few different ways I would like to go out of that. And once again, thank you for sharing. I have really appreciated just how much vulnerability both of you have shared, and what the way that he's kind of worked. And um, so what I'm like curious to know at that point is, of course, there are different elements to God's character and who He says He is, and so it's really hard for us to attain perfection, right? And to be each of these different elements. But I would say, or I'm curious for you, is like, is there any one element of his character of like being loyal or loving or empathetic or any kind of fruits of the spirit, that have been more important to you to work on or to grow in as of late?
Yeah, I would definitely say his loyalty, just knowing that um, he's just like, he's always there. He's always going to be there. Nothing's going to change that. And it's like, that's something that you can't find anywhere else. Like everything else in life is always changing, it's not permanent. Not everything's going to be around forever. And so just knowing that no matter what happens, like he's always going to be there for you. That's definitely something that I I don't know, I feel like that his loyalty, that's important.
Yeah, certainly. And Sage, I kind of want to ask a similar thing to you. Is like, of those different qualities, like, are there any that you have kind of sought out or looked for within yourself or within your walk?
Yeah, so actually this year, the beginning of this year, I was kind of focusing on patience. And so like me seeking patience for myself in the Bible made me realize how patient God is with us. And I think that's something that's just like it just shows how much grace he has for us, and like it motivates me to have patience for others.
Certainly. And here's kind of an interesting place we can go now that I think about it. Is do you two go to church in East Lansing, or what does that look like? Where do you attend, and kind of how are you involved past AIA? I know, obviously.
So actually a lot of us, 5 or 6 of us, go to the Commons every Sunday. And then we also attend SALT on Thursdays at the Commons.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so I would say, like, I'm in crew, and so that's kind of been where I've gravitated towards for sure. And actually tonight we have our kind of end of year thing. Shout out everybody in crew. But what I was curious about is like, how did you get into SALT, and what have been like the highlights or even the lowlights? What are some of the things you've taken away from being in that ministry?
So actually, another person on our team, Skyla Schulte, she invited me to SALT last year when I was a freshman. And so I'd always gone to church my whole life. I'd been going to the Commons with another one of my softball friends. So I was like, yeah, let's go. And I think something I love about the Commons is the different pastors they have. And so obviously different people learn better in different ways. So I think it's kind of like that with the different pastors. Like sometimes you might get something really, really good out of Austin's word, or sometimes you might get something really, really good out of Zach's word. And I think that's just something that drew me in. And I think that SALT is very important because they do their messages specifically faced towards college students. And so it's very touching just to see how much of an impact they have on MSU and just how much everyone around me is growing.
Absolutely. And flipping it over to Sydney, is how are you involved around Michigan State besides AIA? And like, where do you attend? And what does that look like for you?
Yep. So I would say this past year I started going a little more consistently to the Commons with Sage and attending SALT as well. I knew that they were going to SALT last year, but I didn't actually start going until I think in the fall semester. One day we were just sitting in the locker room and they were talking about she was inviting the freshmen actually to come with her, and I just looked at them and I was like, hey, can I come too? Because I had wanted to go for the longest time, but my schedule was just, it was a lot.
Sure.
And I was like, I need that extra time to study. But the senior year, my schedule's a lot lighter. And so I was like, hey, why not? Like, let's just go see what it's about. And I went, and I think I actually ended up going, I think it was a worship night, one of the first nights that I had gone. And it was just cool to see all of the college students in there. And it was kind of refreshing to not be around athletes. There's obviously a bunch of athletes that attend as well.
Sure.
But just seeing everyone like from campus, and it's a huge campus, right? And seeing that room full of college students was just really cool to see.
Absolutely. And, I would say, like, alongside with what I was saying about being in crew, I have been able to jump over to SALT a few times this year. And I think what just has blown me away is the sheer number of people who are there. And for me, I was wondering if both of you could speak on like how cool that is, that there are 600-700 people who are there to worship on a regular basis.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny because I think we leave earlier and earlier each week because we want to get a seat. And it's like when the doors open, everybody just rushes in. And it's crazy to see like how many people just like, I don't know. I feel like when you think about college, you think about the partying aspect of it. Like that's what at least for me, that's kind of what comes to mind. That's the first thing. And so seeing everybody rushing into the church is like, that's just something else. Like it's something that you don't ever think of. And it's honestly something that I didn't think I would see, like that many people in one room worshiping the Lord. Like it's just really cool.
I think the most like heartwarming thing to see is that like all 600, 700 people choose to be there. And like Sydney was saying, we have very limited time as college students and like especially student athletes. And I just think it's so crazy to see how many people are excited to be there and how much community is there. Like when you're there, it seems like everybody knows everybody. And it's just so amazing to see.
Yeah, certainly. And I'm really glad that you brought up the nature of being at such a big place that has such kind of a secular culture. And there are a lot of things that I think we all, if we really sat down and hashed it out, could agree on that aren't necessarily going well in the eyes of, us as believers. And like, I say that because I think it was Saturday afternoon. I was driving around campus and, or actually on Grand River, and there was a flood of people who were going out to a bar crawl. And there were people like literally dancing on rooftops. And I was like, what exactly are we doing here? I mean, come on. But like, that's ridiculous. I mean, seriously, they were everywhere. But I say that because the acknowledgement that there is light that's being shown at Michigan State is just unbelievable, given the fact that there's this kind of counter, of people who are spending time in other ways, and ways that won't necessarily have the same eternal magnitude or benefit. So I really like what both of you were saying there. And like, as we're moving to summer and getting close to the end of time in school or end of this year at least, what are some of the things that you're looking forward to that are coming down the road? And how do you want to stay involved in the Word as some of these communities are changing? And you won't be able to be in Salt, or you won't be able to be at the Commons for at least a couple months or a period of time.
I think something that I really look forward to in the summer is all the free time that I have.
Hmm.
And that for me just makes me super excited to get in my word, because obviously right now, like, I get up early to read my word and do my devotional. But I think in the summer, like, I spend a lot more time in my word because I have a lot more time. And I just think it's super, like, I can see a change in me and in my heart. So yeah, as far as like no salt and no Bible study, um, I think we can still get together, and we talked about doing like over text or over Zoom. So yeah.
That sounds great. That sounds great. And Sydney, I wanted to touch on before we jump out of here is kind of what for you are some of the things, because I imagine being a senior and being somebody who absolutely has a defined role as a leader within the program and, um, with to the younger generation and younger classes of Michigan State athletes, is like, what are some of the things that you've wanted to be mindful of that you're sharing, whether it be like messages or advice or anything to that nature going forward and before you're leaving?
I think definitely something like I shared earlier was how like it's okay to be scared. Like I was definitely scared coming in and being new to the whole walk with Christ, and like for the longest time I was like, I'm not qualified enough to speak on this, or I don't want to say anything and I don't want to ask any questions because I don't want to sound stupid. Like that kind of thing. And that's something that I've definitely grown to um, realize that you're never going to know all the answers. So it's okay to ask questions, and you should ask questions and ask all the questions you need, because someone might know the answer or nobody will know the answer, and then you guys can work together to figure it out. And that's something that we do a lot in our Bible studies. Um, Sometimes it's a word, just like a simple word, and I'm just like, what does this mean? And then we sit there and we figure it out, we look it up. But just remember it, like I don't know if remembering is the right word, but just knowing that like it's okay to not know everything.
Certainly. And I think like that's such an important space to highlight, because what's funny is within the word there are the answers to everything, right? I mean, there really is a lesson or a teaching to be applied for any type of situation. But I think it's funny because in a lot of ways it's meant to be studied deeply and to be talked about within different circles. So I was curious, is like, what is one of the questions that you have continually been pondering, or if you have any, maybe something that you're still unsure of, that you're looking to grow in your understanding of?
That's a good question.
You know what? I try to ask good questions. I really do.
I would have to say, I think, honestly, something that I ask myself a lot is, at what point will I feel like I have a good grasp of the word? I feel like I continue to read and I continue to learn, and I'm like, it's never ending. Like, and I think that's something that I do ask myself a lot. I'm like, is there going to be a point where I feel like I will know most of the answers, or I will know at least half of the answers? Because I'm like, for the longest time, I feel like I could maybe get an F on that test. Like, I don't know all the answers, and I know I never will know all of them, but just, will there be a point where I know more than I do now?
Absolutely. I love that. That's a great question. And I think like a conscious reminder to be had in that everybody who's on a journey is in their own unique place, right? And there's a time and place for knowing all that you do. And so I respect that and I appreciate that. The admittance of like, gosh, dang it, I might not, ever be in a place where I'm like, yeah, I could get an A, right? And that's obviously coming back to what we were speaking on earlier, which is the concept of being judged, right? It's just about, in that case, in the understanding of the word, the constant pursuit and the grasping of knowledge. So I like that. Um, let me think here because we've covered a lot of really good things, and I'm really happy that you guys are here, and I hope it's been a good opportunity for you guys to share as well. And with that, I was wondering, are there any last minute thoughts or any shout outs you want to give or anything to be talked about before we jump out of here?
You got anything?
Maybe something a little. Okay. Lately, something that I've been very focused on also is understanding. There was this sermon at Salt a couple weeks ago, and it was talking about how we are children of God and understanding what that means, and that kind of helped me dive into how God is my Father and how we have inheritance in Him. And so lately, I've been just looking for that in all the places of the Bible, because if you're blind to that, you can't really see what they mean by sisters in Christ, brothers in Christ. And so it's kind of opened my eyes up to understanding a lot of the Bible.
Absolutely. That's awesome. And thank you for sharing that last minute thing. Sage, I was wondering, and this is kind of one of my last thoughts or last questions, but is there anything that you're looking for, whether it be improvement wise or changes that you want to make going forward into next year of competition and next year of growing in faith? And what are you kind of looking for over your time in college still?
I think going to the years forward, obviously, I still want to focus on keeping or integrating God into my sport and knowing that it's not I have an audience of one, so the judges, they don't really matter. The score doesn't really matter. How I do doesn't really matter. And so I think that's really how I live my life as well. Honestly, things matter, but comparison and self-esteem, I feel it's just something we can all find in God. And so I take that into my sport, and no matter if I have a bad day, there's always something to be thankful for and there's always something to look forward to. So I think just bringing that into next year, working very hard, seeing my hard work pay off, and giving glory to God for it. So.
Certainly. And, I was kind of joking when I said shout outs, but I kind of wasn't. Because I know there are many things to be thankful for or to shout out or to give thanks to because of how, as we touched on very early, God's a provider. And it just has immense capability to do that. So I was wondering, before we go, this is kind of the last point of the show here is, do you guys have anything to give thanks for, to shout out? I wanted to shout out your teammates because I know we touched on both of them going to Texas today, so wanted to make sure that was done. But seriously, floor is for all of y'all to talk about anything you might want to be thankful for, gracious for.
Lately, as I am learning about being a child of God and the inheritance and everything, I'm super thankful for my mom and just how good of an example she is for me and how she pushes me and continues to help me grow.
So this is something I wanted to mention. I wanted to shout out our teammate Skyla for before every meet, she would lead our prayer circle. So as a whole team, our whole roster of 23, we circle up, hold hands, and we bow our heads. And it's just something that has become a tradition at this point. We've kind of integrated it into our, what do we call those? Our
hype circle.
Our little cheers we do before we march out. And it's really cool to see everyone participate in that, whether they're believers or not. And it just kind of like, it gives us a second to just kind of quiet our minds and remember that we are doing our sport. It's not for us, it's for the Lord and just only Him, before we go out there and like crazy energy and all that. So just a quick shout out to her for leading that before every meet.
Certainly. Well, thank you both so much for being here and for being a part of episode 21 on Confluence World Podcast. I really appreciate it. And I'm so glad that we could figure out time and place to make it happen. And really excited to see, obviously, Sydney, in your case, what's next and where you're headed to. And then Sage, just continued development and growth in sport and faith the next couple of years. So really excited just to be around next year for that and kind of see what's happening. So thank you all so much. And folks, that'll do it for us on Confluence World Podcast. It's episode 21, which actually I just wanted to kind of give a shout out to everybody who has come on and everybody who is thinking about coming on or scheduled to, or maybe the Lord necessarily hasn't placed in the hand of Confluence podcast yet. But seriously, I've been so thankful for the way that things have gone here, and really excited to see over summer how things continue to develop and where we're headed to next year. Honestly, at this point, can't guarantee how many or like I guess how many conversations we will have. But I just wanted to acknowledge that we've been extremely blessed with who we've been able to speak to and the types of conversations we have had over this school year. I mean, it's hard to even fathom that, there were 21 unique conversations and episodes that were had despite scheduling and despite travel and despite school and sports. So it's been really unique, and I'm really thankful for everything that has been able to happen as well. So wanted to say this may be the last of the season. We're kind of breaking it down by semesters and doing like season 1 and 2, which is where we're at right now. But just thank you all, and really excited to see where we go. But that's it for us on Confluence World Podcast.